Welcome back, CSC103, to part 2 of our apple pear exercise. We already have the pear. Now, a couple things I should do here is I should save as, because I haven't saved it yet. And I'll just save it on my desktop. I'll put it right in my textures for now, just to keep it in one place because I'm recording a video. So I'll just call it pear-apple. Since I'm doing the pear first, I'll call it pear-apple. And it's the Blender file, so I'm just going to save that first. And I didn't save any renderings yet. And remember to go back out of render view. You could hit the escape key, or you could go down here to view and make it go into 3D view. Now I'm going to go back to the front view, and I'm going to go, it's front orthos out, that's what I want. And I'm actually just going to move my pear out of the way, just so it's kind of off to the left right now. And I want to keep this view, and I'm going to add another, I'll add a mesh UV sphere again. And I'll hit my S key and make it a little bigger. And if I right click on this, I can move this out of the way a little more. And I'll zoom in, and it is front ortho, that's what I want. And we're going to do the same thing, and I'll left click on this to select it. We're going to do the same thing we did with the pear. So I'm going to go to edit mode, and it still has the same settings on with this. I want this light gray, and I want my proportional editing on, so that I want that little blue light on. And then I could hit A to toggle back and forth. Now we're going to make an apple, so I'm just going to kind of highlight this middle upper, kind of the forehead part of this sphere here to kind of highlight the upper part of an apple to kind of pull it out a little bit. So I'm going to hit B, and maybe I'll select right about here and just kind of get this middle portion. And all I'm going to do is hit S and kind of scale out. And you can see if I scale out now, it's making a weird kind of, looks like an acorn. But if I roll my scroll wheel bigger, it has more influence over everything. So that it kind of blends in a little more what I'm doing. Now it doesn't look like an apple yet. It's a little wide. It looks a little strawberry-ish or something. But I'm going to do about that, and I'm going to left click and OK it. And then I'm going to hit G while those are still selected. I'll hit G and I'll start to kind of pull up a little bit. And actually, this is really easy, because this actually is pulling up, and it's leaving the center point at the top up there, so it's actually making my little indentation without actually having to do that. Look at that, it put a little indentation in there without actually having to do that, just by hitting the G key. And and that it all depends on what your setting is, but what my setting was pretty good, so that kind of pulled up. Even if I want to scale out a little more, I could do that, left click, and then hit my G key again, and kind of pull that up. Left click, and that's not too bad. If I want to narrow anything in, I can hit my B key, make sure you deselect, and if for whatever reason I wanted to narrow this in a little, I could hit my S key and kind of narrow it in a little. I could increase or decrease my influence on what I'm narrowing, and it's kind of heart-shaped right now, and that's okay. And then also I'm going to just hit A again to deselect. I'm going to bring the inside of it in, so I'm going to right click here, just make sure that you're on the vertex selection. And again, since I have this proportional editing on, I'm going to hit G instead of using the arrow. And I'm going to pull it in and bring it a little closer. Increase a little bit, because that way it'll flatten the apple a little. And left click when I'm done. And it's not a bad looking apple for, just one shot at it. Looks a little flat on the bottom. And if I view from front again, maybe there's something I can do to fix that. Actually, I could maybe hit my B key and highlight everything. There's my B. When you hit B, you should see this little vertical and horizontal lines. And I'm actually going to go here and hit G and kind of pull everything up a little. Just stretch it a little bit. And that just stretches it out. And you could just stretch it out too. You could select the whole object when you're done and stretch it out. But that looks pretty good, so I'll hit A. And remember, your mouse has to be in this area here when you hit some of these keys. If you ever hit your key and nothing's happening, your mouse might be off to the side. So you got to have your mouse kind of in this area here. So I'm pretty much done with my apple now. And what I'm going to do is take it out of edit mode, go back to object mode. I'll smooth it out over here. There's a smooth shading. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect right now. That's not the goal to have it perfect, but just to kind of get used to modeling a little bit. And I saw my camera there, so we'll have to see where our camera is. We'll do that in part 3. But again, the process to put the apple skin on here is very easy, and it's just like we did with the pear. We just have to make sure it's selected, make sure we're in object mode, we're no longer in edit mode, and add a material first, and just hit new. You can make it red because it just feels better to make it red. And then I'm going to go to my texture, and if you don't see anything, scroll up and hit new. Nothing else to do. And I'll hit open, and it already went to my desktop, so I'm going to go to Apple Skin, and I'll hit open, and there it is. And you can see it's a map that's already meant to kind of wrap around an apple because it has the light part at the top. And what we'll do is scroll down and change UV to generate it, and flat to sphere. And if you wanted to put an ever so slight geometry on it, you could click here, and I'll just go negative very slightly, not even as much as the pear, because I don't want much of a texture on my apple. It'll look kind of wrinkly and old. But let me render it and see what I got going on here. And you see what I mean? It looks a little wrinkly. So I could go here and make it like 0.05 or something. You got to get used to highlighting these things here, but I'll go negative 0.05 and hit enter and see how that looks. And you could render again, even though there's a render up. And that looks a little better. That doesn't look as noticeable as far as the texture. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of put our background in, and we're going to put kind of a floor in there of a plane, and we're going to put our walls in there, and then we're just going to adjust our light so we get rid of some of these shadows on the other side. And let me go back to 3D view. So this is what we have right now. I'll right click on this. I'll kind of move them together, and I might want to scale down my apple a little bit. I could just hit S and scale it down and see where they are. I'll move them up so they're kind of sitting on the grid, because we're probably going to put our wood texture on top of the grid. So if I view from front, I'll kind of see where they are. They could be, you know, down below a little bit because there'll be some shadow there. And I'll render it again just to see where I'm at. And you can see my camera's off a little bit, so I can move my fruit, or I can move my camera. And you can see there's where the camera is. So if I wanted to move these over, I could move them over a little bit just for now. Just kind of get them set up for the camera. And if I rendered it, that's probably going to look a little bit better. Camera still needs to be pointed up a little bit, and we could fix that. That'll be fine to do. And we're going to do that in our next video. So I'm going to go back to 3D view. I'm going to save what I have, because remember I did the apple and the pear in the same video here. So I'm going to file, save what I have. And then when we come back, we're going to put on the floor texture, or the counter texture, the wood texture, and then we're going to put the tile texture, and we're just going to put 3 planes, and we're going to adjust our lamp, maybe put a second lamp over here to light up some of the shadows, and then we'll be done.